Yep, we're on.
Aloha, everybody.
Aloha, gang. It's Mel and Charlie here on a special edition, especially for coming in this early to the Mel and Charlie show. Thank you for joining us. Mel got his new camera and new lighting. Everything is working fine. Cable's up again. We apologize for last night due to technical difficulties, right, brother? And today we are raring to go. Decided to start off a little early. Want to get some things out of the way because I know there's a lot of questions. I pulled some questions up off of Messenger as well as the internet, Facebook for Dr. Kim. Jerome Kim, who will be joining us at 4 o'clock Hawaii time, which will be 11 o'clock tomorrow, Wednesday, in South Korea. So we'll be very honored to have him back, especially with the rollout of the Pfizer vaccine and soon the Moderna vaccine that will be rolling out. Now, Mel, will this session be recorded and then replayed at 7, or you'll just upload it and put it on
Yeah,
at
yeah. What
8?
I'll do is I'll upload it, and then we'll just post a video up on Facebook Live, and then possibly start a watch party, and everybody can comment as well. That's the plan, anyway. I'm just keeping my fingers crossed that the internet stays on. I apologize for last night, man. That was freakish. It just right about I don't know, 6:30, 6:40. I don't know, when did I text you, Charlie? About 6:30?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it just went kaput. TV and internet both went out. So it's frustrating. It's frustrating. So we came on extra early today, just to make sure all the systems are working and everything is okay. So it looks like it is. So I expect a lot of people on tonight. Dr. Kim is this guy is one of the most sought after speakers, in the world, and we're just lucky to have him on again. This is his third appearance on the Mel and Charlie show, so we are just honored and blessed to have him. He's a busy guy, especially as Charlie said with the rolling out of the vaccines. We weren't the first. The United States weren't the first, but it went out today. Hawaii started giving out the vaccines on Oahu to medical personnel. So we're on our way, people. We keep talking about the things we got to do, the mask wearing and the social distance and staying away from the gatherings. Um, and all of that ties in with the vaccine and making sure that we get the vaccine out into the communities. And that in conjunction with, that's not the silver bullet, guys. That's not going to end it. Uh, it's part of the solution, but we got to do our part. We all got to do our part, and we cannot get complacent. I noticed a lot of complacency in the last month or so. People are tired. COVID fatigue is real. I suffer from it. I know many of you suffer from it. It's just tiring already. It's every day it's the same thing, and we got to be extra careful. We got to be very cognizant of wearing the mask. And today I had to do a presentation inside of a room with other people, and just wearing that mask for the duration. It's not easy, but we must, and we cannot uh, take it easy now. We gotta again, in conjunction with the vaccine and all the other protocols. Hopefully we'll be able to get out of this thing sooner than later, but it's not going to happen overnight, man. It's not going to happen overnight. If you guys got questions, go ahead and put them in the chat box, in the comment box. And what we're going to do, because I don't want to take away from the doctor's time. I know Kiala was very anxious in giving away another gift last night, but just no can help. No more internet. No, there's nothing we could do. So we wanna, if you guys want, again, messenger, okay? Send me your name in messenger, and we'll go ahead and get a list up. And I'll probably run the randomization right after this, after I download after I download the video and get it back up tonight. We'll do the randomization on a separate video, okay? So please go ahead and send me your name in messenger, uh, and we'll get the winner off to Kiala so she can you can get your bag or your purse or whatever it is that she's giving away. I want to thank Kiala very much for that, her generosity. We never play hooky, Sherry. We did not play hooky. Spectrum. I don't know what happened. I don't know what happened, but I know some of the people in the house lost power as well.
Oh no, you frozen up again, Mel. If you can hear me, you're frozen. Technical difficulties. One more time. He's getting frozen. Anyway, folks, I believe I'm still on, so I'm gonna try to wait until he gets back. Mel, you're up again, Mel. You're up and running.
The thing is, I'm hardwired in. It's telling me my internet connection is unstable. I don't know what the heck. I don't know if Spectrum is still working on this thing or
Okay.
I'm showing full strength on my internet. So
Yeah. You got me
um,
as a co-host with you tonight, just in case
oh
you
yeah,
do.
good call, buddy. Good call.
So, ladies and gentlemen, what we're going to do tonight is Mel's going to make me a co-host remotely in case anything happens. We can stay up on air. And while you have the time right now, please, I beg you to please share this segment with us. Share this with all of your friends. Start a watch party. Do whatever you need to do, but share this because we will be concentrating on vaccines. I know that seems to be a hot button topic, but I think for the most part, should anything happen with the connections between either Mel or myself, one of us will be up on air. That because once we get Dr. Kim, it's very important that we keep him up with us for the entire hour, so we can hopefully keep our fingers crossed. No technical difficulties. Okay.
Hang on here. I'm trying to look up messages from Eddie Hori.
Ed Hori. Orie.
Ed Hori. I'm not sure what he's saying. He's sending me a lot of messages, but I have two messages in my messenger that came in on the 12th. 88, 88. I'm not sure what 88 stands for. If was that the night we did the that might have been the night we did the bag and you had to pick a number. But Ed, that's the only two messages I have. 88 and 88 for December 12th. So I'm not sure which messages. No, he's anyway. I don't know. Hang on. It's in my spam folder, by the way. I'm not sure why. Oh, I apologize. There's a bunch of people in here in my spam folder. Okay, Ed, I'm not sure. I'm seeing two messages, both saying 88. So if that's you, I apologize. I'm not sure what to make of it, but anyway, he posted in the comments. That's why that I still haven't returned his messages, but I never. That's the only two I got. Anyway, thank you for your patience, people. Thank you for your people. No, you're not picking a number, just your name, just your name. I just need your name, and then we're going to put your name in the randomizer, and then we'll randomize all the names. Okay.
Yes.
Marshall says 20 cases at an airline. Uh-oh.
Yep. I think we know where it is, but it's just not hitting the airwaves just yet.
I still, we hear from people that's on the front line. We hear from people, whether it's wherever. And we don't get it. We don't get the reports from the state. And now you look at Honolulu. They're not going to count the Halava numbers in their
Mhm.
daily count of the inmates. They'll count the employees, but not the inmates. You know, I've never, I investigated white collar crime, embezzlements for many years in KPD. And this is exactly what cooking the books means. No, you count everything. Guys, you you count everything and you let the chips fall where they may. I don't understand how you can just say, oh, you know what, it's making us look bad, so we're not going to count. We're not going to count the numbers in Halava because then it's going to make it more difficult for us to get to the next tier. I don't get it. And we sit back, we meaning the government sits back and says, okay, sure, because we want to see you guys get to tier, whatever their next tier is, 3 or whatever. Ed says, when did inmates turn into non-people? Exactly, Ed. What the hell? What? Just that baffles me. And again, Department of Health sits back and say, okay, that's fine. Just whatever works for your objective, which is to get to tier 3. Why would you want to get tier 3? You got to understand, in a prison, people go in and out, in and out, in and out. You get employees come in, employees go out. You have inmates come in and inmates come out. So what the hell is the difference? The infected needs to be counted. I mean, so would you apply that rationale to the hospitals? Because they're in the hospitals, we're not going to count them? Oh, in a restaurant? I mean, come on, people. It's just so obvious what they're trying to do. And then Civil Beat comes out with a report, an article today about Dr. DeWolf Miller's. I guess he did his report. And he said that the safe travel program works fine, that we're only between 1 and 2 per thousand, using all that inaccurate data that Dr. Dara O'Carroll talked about. But they promote that. And again, putting out the message that, no, it's working. Well, funny, it's not working on Kauai. Prior to the quarantine, it wasn't working on Kauai. We had more travel-related cases. We had more cases coming in that tested negative that were actually positive. So please, Doc, we've had Dr. DeWolf on our show, and his report isn't peer-reviewed. It's not peer-reviewed. He's using all the numbers from the Big Island, which we know is not accurate. So come on, guys. Interesting. Unbelievable. So.
Well, I did do a post on the prisons, and I think I shouldn't say neat, but it's sort of neat in a way. If you're looking to attain a herd immunity, right? We hear that term used so many times. The best place to try to do it is in the prison, because why? You have the virus confined. That's what you want to do. You want to have it confined so you don't have to really go out and search for it. It's there. Get who's not infected, get them immunized, right?
Mm-hmm.
Not infected. And then hopefully over time, the duration within the prison um, is when the thing can either start settling down, right?
Mm-hmm.
And do what some of neighboring countries like Australia or New Zealand has been done. That it's similar to closing off your borders. Nothing goes in, nothing comes out. The only difference with the prisons is you have the ingress and egress of staff members going in and out.
Mm-hmm.
As far as prisoner exchange going in and out, it's very minimal right now.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we stopped the prisoner exchange going to Arizona. I think it was last week. We didn't let a plane go over. And we've been getting prisoners back from what the news have been saying. Prisoners come in, they go straight to Halava in holding. They're segregated, right? But you kind of wonder, is that how the virus got in? Because it spread fast, the numbers increased. It almost seems as if the numbers increase faster than O triple C.
Yeah.
And so I would have to assume that it started to spread with this possibly this transfer, because it was quite fast. It was quite fast. So those are one of the things to think about. But nonetheless, again, we do have the vaccine on hand. Um, I've got a lot of questions for doc, and ladies and gentlemen, we're going to ask questions hopefully that can enlighten you, because there's some of you out there who are skeptics of the vaccine. Me personally, if I have an opportunity to take it, I am going to take it. I am going to take it. And I don't see any reason why, because if a vaccine was harmful right now, we would see more reports of harm being done. But I haven't seen it yet. But what I would like to know is how does it affect others? Because I can almost see complacency once you get vaccinated. I can almost see people going, hallelujah. And you can't blame them because we've been cooped up in this situation for the last 10 months. They get one vaccine, they're going to let their hair down and they don't care. Because one of the questions I'm going to post tonight, and some of you may have read it in my post, is in some of the experts, we definitely find out that the vaccine is to build your immunity. Now, does it kill the virus? Are you able to still catch the virus? And if you are you able to even transmit the virus? See, those kind of questions I would like to know because I think everyone who gets vaccinated, you should be given knowledge that, hey, you still can be potentially dangerous to somebody who hasn't had gotten the vaccination. Okay. And I think it's only um, humanistic of you to be thoughtful of your neighbor, of your friends next to you. You know, we don't want anything bad happening. So that's the reason why there's a lot of questions to ask. Again, Mel and Charlie, we just get the information and we try to share it. And if it works for you, fine. And if it doesn't work for you, that's fine too. Nobody's going to criticize you. Um, we just keep it civil. And you know, if it doesn't work for you and you want to move on, okay, that's your prerogative. But there are a lot of people out there that want to know that they want some. I don't say they're demanding for answers, but again, maybe the government could have done a better job in providing the message rollout attached to this virus. Get a message in there, what it does, what it doesn't do, you know, stuff like that. I think then everyone would have a better understanding, a better understanding.
It's a good segue into my next question.
Uh oh, Mel, you're frozen again for some reason. Lord help us. Hello, Mel. Frozen. Well, ladies and gentlemen, this is what we were experiencing, and this is what we were worried about. But again, it could be the connection from Mel's from Mel's end. So you know, we are still live. We are still live at this point, and I'm gonna keep us on here, and just hoping and praying that in a little while, Doc. Okay, so now we have gone off the air. Oh boy. Well, let's see how this thing plays out because I'm off the air right now. I know the last time I stayed on, apparently I was still going and nothing was everything was a okay. So I don't know if he okay, I'm still on. So, but I don't know if we're live. If you can see me, ladies and gentlemen, and I'm still on the air with you, can you just post something? Let me know that I'm still rocking and rolling with you folks because we want to make sure that when Dr. Kim comes on, that he'll remain with us. Okay, thank you very much. We're still live on Facebook Live, so that's good. Anyway, we're gonna give Mel some time to get booted up and come back on. But thank you, Marshall. But like I said, you know, it'll be very interesting to note some of the nuances with this vaccine. Okay, so there he is. There's the one and only Mr. Mel Raposo. He's back on again. Hey, brother, can you hear me? Okay.
I'm actually, yeah, I can hear you. Hang on.
Okay. You're going to use your other camera.
I'm on my phone now.
Okay. Okay. Well,
Are
if
we on? Are we still on Facebook?
yes, we are. We are live on Facebook. Yes, sir.
Okay. Well, I guess this is how we're gonna have to do it. Spectrum is fired.
I'm sorry, my brother. Okay.
Spectrum is fired.
You're on your Wi-Fi.
Yep. I'm on my. Hang on. I get somebody trying to call me on Messenger.
Okay.
Just keep them entertained. Oh, keep them entertained. Keep them entertained.
Okay. No.
Of all nights.
Well, it looks like with everything that you're doing, it looks like you having a disco lights and disco action going on over there.
Well, I don't know what's going on. Anyway, I can hear you good. Can you hear me now?
Yep, I can hear you good. I can hear you good. Yep.
Okay. No, my screen is kind of. Okay. Anyway, sorry, people. Spectrum is fired. Anybody work for another internet company that services the Wailo house lots? Let me know. I'm actually on my phone. It's a good thing connected and this way,
Yeah, but the only thing is you sound like
as long as my
you
Wi-Fi hangs up.
no you playing on banjo. That
Huh?
bam, bam, bam. No, sometimes it sounds
Oh, is
like
there an echo?
no. It sounds like you're playing on banjo. Just that.
Okay.
Anyway,
Well, Dr. Kim, I was just about to say, Dr. Kim is going to be on shortly,
yep.
and the only problem. But guys, try to be professional tonight. I know this is a very emotional issue, vaccines and this is not the forum to go and blast each other. I was going to warn you guys once. Charlie will, because I cannot see the comments, but if Charlie sees a comment, he's going to text me and you block. Okay, I just hate to be the bad guy, but we get 1 hour with Dr. Kim. This guy is, like I said, he's well respected. Uh, uh, we have no idea what he's gonna say, but if you guys want to go fight with each other, go fight with each other on your guys' own messenger platform. Don't do it on the stream because you will get blocked. Okay. The last warning. That's it. That's all I got to say.
Yeah. Well,
Not
anyway,
really in a good mood right now.
I understand, brother. It's technology today. Um, if we had that donor that was willing to was going to donate close to 5 million for our studio, you know. No, I know it's hard. You try to do this the best way you
Yeah.
can, and things happen like this. But we'll try to we'll
Well,
try.
when I was coming home, I saw the Spectrum trucks down below, so I'm assuming they're working on a big job. I everybody this 4 o'clock.
Okay. Well, no, just giving you a heads up. Your speaking piece is going in and out, in and out. So cannot fully understood what you said. But if
Okay.
thumbs up, you
Charlie,
wanna,
I'm gonna go off. I'm gonna go off camera. I'll still be on. I'll still be listening, but I'm gonna go off camera.
yeah.
While I reset my router, and then oh, there he is. He's in.
So I will.
So
Okay. I will admit Dr. Kim. Okay.
Hey,
Hello.
yeah, I
Aloha.
just should be.
Aloha.
Good
How
to
are you,
good.
Doc?
Yeah,
Doing great. You guys?
we're doing good. We're doing good. We just
Yeah, sorry for this. It's 10 degrees
Hey,
outside.
Doc.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Doc, I'm gonna go off camera and I'm gonna mute. We're having some internet problems on my end. We're up on a good connection though, so I gotta reset my router. We're on Charlie's internet right now, so we're okay.
Okay.
So I'll just go ahead and talk story. I'll be back in about 2 minutes.
Yeah. Thanks.
Well, it's so good to have you, Dr. Kim, and I've seen you. You've been busy. Seen a lot of your postings recently, and why don't you just bring us up to date? What's been happening in the vaccine world? I know that's a hot button topic right now, especially with Pfizer and soon to follow Moderna, and we don't know about the rest yet. But those are the predominant two right now. That's on the deck right now. That's
Yeah, the big two for the US are Pfizer and Moderna, which are both RNA vaccines. So, we've never had an RNA vaccine for anything before, and now we actually have two that appear to protect against disease and appear to be safe at 2 to 3 months average time of follow-up. Be nice to have more time in follow-up. The vaccine from AstraZeneca looks like it might be on the average 70% efficacious, so a little bit lower, but it is probably more widely available. Right now the company thinks it can make 1 billion doses or 2 billion doses pretty quickly. But they had some issues with the way they did their trial, so we can talk about that if you're interested. And then, outside of the West, you have that Russian vaccine, and we had a weird announcement from a Chinese vaccine company. Actually, not the company didn't make the announcement. The company has been absolutely quiet, but the Ministry of Health in the United Arab Emirates announced that it was the vaccine was 86% protective, and I think another Gulf emirate has also approved the vaccine. So, we don't know. It's probably not going to. Well, they never had a Chinese vaccine apply for US FDA approval before, but for other parts of the world, that may be good enough.
right. What maybe the question that needs to be asked right now is, because there's this I don't know how widespread it is, but because of this speculative reasoning, because of where the virus first started, and now you have a Chinese vaccine coming out. So I guess some may say ponder on the question, how convenient it is that it's coming out now, and and how reliable. I mean, I think for many who are not vaccine experts, such as yourself, we will rely on your review of what you see, and maybe that can share if there are warnings associated with those vaccines, or if there are pluses to those vaccines. Correct?
Yeah. So it's kind of interesting. So we say the Chinese vaccine, but in fact, the vaccine that was announced was actually tested as two vaccines. One from Beijing Institute for Biological Products, and the other one from a sister company. So this conglomerate makes 70% of the vaccines used in China. So that's a lot of doses. It may actually be one of the biggest vaccine manufacturing companies in the world. But the other institute whose vaccine was being tested at the same time was from Wuhan.
Oh.
And Wuhan, the same Wuhan. So the Wuhan Institute of Biological Products is one of the biotech companies associated with this big Chinese company. The products appear to be relatively similar. In fact, in this clinical trial in the United Arab Emirates, Bahrain, Egypt, and I think one other country in the Arab world, they tested 25,000 people, and they tested the two products, not mixed together, but separately. But they only commented on the one from Beijing, which is a little unusual. And the company hasn't commented, which is very unusual. Usually Pfizer or Moderna, AstraZeneca, the CEO is out there talking about, this is our great vaccine. The Chinese companies have not made an announcement yet. And I think the reason is they're not allowed to make an announcement until their Food and Drug Administration, which is called the NMPA, actually allows the vaccine, approves the vaccine. So that's what we're thinking. The vaccine is pretty simple, actually. It's not like an RNA vaccine, high tech, first of its kind. This is what we call a whole inactivated vaccine. And so it's like the vaccines that we used to get the injection for polio, which is inactivated. Many of the flu vaccines are inactivated. So you just grow up the virus and you kill it. And you mix it up with something that makes it better, called an adjuvant, and then you inject it. So it's one of the oldest forms of vaccine technology that we have. And this Chinese company in particular, Sinopharm, has vaccines that are approved by the World Health Organization. So they passed through at least one outside of China review. And whether this vaccine will pass, we don't know. And no one's seen the data. We haven't actually seen the Moderna data yet either, but Pfizer and AstraZeneca have both published, at least you can see it in a journal, what their data actually showed and what kind of side effects there were, which I think is it's very important to have that information. And then also to, begin to think about the next questions. What did those big trials, 40,000 people, leave unanswered? And those are the kinds of questions that we'll have through next year.
Okay. Well, maybe let me ask you a question. Someone popped up a question besides the AstraZeneca, Moderna, Pfizer, what you just mentioned about the Middle East, as well as through China, I guess, and through Wuhan. We also have Johnson and Johnson that supposedly is coming. But how has their report? Have you been able to see anything out of their camp, should I say?
So what we know about their vaccine is that when it was tested in monkeys, it protected monkeys. Actually, all of the vaccines that we've tested that actually have shown efficacy have all protected monkeys. So maybe that's a good sign. The other part is that, when you look at the amount, so when you get a vaccine in a clinical trial, about 4 weeks after we give you the final dose, we draw blood from you and we look in the blood to see if the vaccine is making these infection fighting proteins called antibodies. And in particular, we're interested in this neutralizing antibody, the antibody that can bind to the virus and inactivate it or keep it from entering our body, entering into the cells of the body. And that's actually a really important test because we think that might be the thing that protects people. So if you look at the neutralizing antibody, the Johnson & Johnson vaccine falls into the same range as the Pfizer vaccine, as the AstraZeneca vaccine, as this Chinese vaccine that was just announced. So those 4 companies are between a level of 100 and 500. Okay. So they're all in that right range. And the interesting thing about the Johnson & Johnson vaccine, the company the subsidiary that makes it is called Janssen. The Janssen vaccine is a single dose. Now, we don't know how long it will last and if you'll need booster doses, but at least initially, the vaccine is going to be given as a single dose. So it has some advantages for ease of administration. It appears to have relatively few side effects. I mean, again, we call them adenovirus vaccines. So chimpanzee adenovirus is the one that AstraZeneca is making. The adenovirus type 5 and 26 is the one that the Russian company is making. And we've used adenovirus vaccines in thousands of people, and side effect profiles are pretty predictable, and they're fairly mild. They're not like the RNA vaccines. So from a side effect acceptability and from an ease of administration, Johnson & Johnson has some things to recommend it. It probably won't be available. The data won't be available till January, maybe the latter half of January. I'm not absolutely positive there, but that's what we've been told. Okay. There's one more from a small biotech company in Rockville, Maryland. It's called Novavax, and the U.S. government invested a lot of funding with them, and so did CEPI, this international organization. And theirs is a protein. So again, there are adenovirus-based vaccines. There are whole inactivated, COVID-19 vaccines, but then there are some vaccines that are actually taking just a bit of the virus. And if you remember the virus, it kind of looks like a ball with spikes on it. What the company has done is it's taken those spikes and it's purified them. And that is the vaccine. So it's actually much simpler and much more, the body's defensive reaction is really centered only on that protein, which in a sense is good. We know that we can make a lot of it, and it's relatively cheap to make. And the company has combined it with a very powerful new adjuvant, something that makes the immune responses stronger. So if you look at that, the level of neutralizing antibody, the protective antibody, it
Right.
blows, it's way, way above the competition. So that data should come out end of January also. So, there could be other alternatives later on in the year, if the US FDA agrees and if the efficacy and safety are good. Although again, these two vaccines, at least in the initial data, look pretty reasonable from a side effect profile.
So let me ask you, doctor, what's with the why did Pfizer and Moderna go with the mRNA? I mean, is it synthetic in its base? If I from a common approach to it, because it sounds so high tech, and I know you just mentioned about the adenoviruses and the relative ease of going that route, but this seems so complicated, and yet it's a breakthrough. But I guess the clinical trials, as you said, it probably was a very small amount, and so we really don't have vast information about it, what it will do, or how well it will, I guess, stimulate the immune system to develop one's immunity, right?
Yes, so the RNA vaccines, we've been talking about them for now 2 decades.
Okay.
I mean, we were talking to one of the companies back in the early 2000s for an HIV vaccine made from RNA. The technology has advanced primarily in the cancer area, but also for some infectious diseases like influenza vaccine or rabies vaccine. But the work hasn't gone that quickly until now. And so, what the companies said to the FDA and the European regulatory agency, which is true, is that, in fact, these vaccines, the RNA-based vaccines, have been in thousands of people, and they don't have, the side effect profile is pretty minimal and tolerable, I guess. And, I think that they've learned a bit. The first set of data, as is typically the case in humans, wasn't all that, didn't knock your socks off. But they've gotten better at it. They've been able to work with companies like BioNTech in order to pair their RNA vaccine with certain ways of packaging it to make the immune responses stronger. Actually, so strong that in the initial Pfizer trial, they had to cut back 2 doses in order to get to one that both gave them great responses, but also had a tolerable profile of side effects. I mean, the initial really high doses, they had to stop because the side effect profile was so severe, mostly fever. And so they cut it back 2 levels. And so the one that they picked, I mean, it still has fever. People still feel achy. They still feel tired. And it gets worse after the second dose. Older people are not as badly affected as younger people by the side effects. And, so although there isn't a lot of experience, it used to be said, and again, this was before we actually had a vaccine, that we could make 1 billion doses of RNA vaccine in a room the size of a large conference room, which is amazing. Because when you look at the way the adenovirus vaccines are made, or some of the other vaccines, they're made in these giant, 2,000 liter stainless steel fermenters with all these pipes, because the vaccine has to be moved from station to station. Where the RNA vaccines are like a drug almost. They're made they can be made chemically and put together chemically. So no biological processes involved, which from a manufacturing perspective actually is easier to control, easier to we say validate, but easier to put into place all those things that you need to do to check it. Biological systems, something could go wrong with a fermentation, wrong temperature, the the system that you want starts to spit out different parts of the viral vaccine. So it's a little more complicated. And that's why, you see a lot of questions around intellectual property around drugs, copycat drugs and things, and generics. It's much harder to make a generic, and much more expensive to make a generic form of a vaccine, because not only do you have to make it, you have to then show that new construct does exactly what the old one does, which is sometimes a problem. It's actually a barrier. Hope that.
Well, one last question. We got Mel back on with us, but there seems to be this the talk now, because of the first two healthcare frontline workers that took the vaccine in the UK were affected by severe allergic reaction.
Yeah.
And it sounded to me like the way it was reported that they went into anaphylaxis, and so luckily both of them had their EpiPens with them and basically stabbed themselves. How common will this be? I mean, we just heard of the two. I haven't heard of any others occurring, but what's the negating process? Because there's, as you know, in Hawaii, we have a lot of people that do have allergies, and
Mhm.
this is something that they're really keeping an eye on. But hoping, as they watch them, that maybe they can make an informed decision, and maybe also talking with their PCP, that whether it will be a good one to do or not with the RNA, or wait for the AstraZeneca to come out and go that route. So what's your take on that, Doc?
So, I think that the UK version of the FDA, they call themselves the MHRA. The MHRA issued a guidance, and Public Health in England also, that if you have severe allergies, if you need to carry around an EpiPen, you might consider not taking the vaccine. These were healthcare workers, so their jobs would subject them to risk also. And if they have severe allergies, you don't know what COVID will do in the setting of allergies. I mean, it could actually make the reaction to the virus worse. So again, it's, I think, something that has to be discussed with individuals. Remember that these vaccines, if you actually, I read the MHRA document, and it really very clearly says, we are not approving this for general sale and use in the United Kingdom. We are approving it for use under specific circumstances. This vaccine is not approved, and the US FDA will issue the same guidance. This is not an approved vaccine. This is not approved for general marketing and sale around the United States. Right now, it's emergency use only. And so, we're still going to be collecting information like what happened to those two unfortunate people. The US FDA will actually require that you get a flyer that tells you, this vaccine is approved for emergency use, and it'll tell you, if you, these are the potential side effects. I mean, it's going to be like an information sheet that you should get that should inform you about what to expect. So it's really not going to be like going to Long's and getting a shot for flu. But again, it's really important to gauge risk. I mean, healthcare workers are very important. ICUs have filled up again. We need to protect them in order so that they can do their jobs. And, the elderly are also at particular risk. And again, we've seen the impact. All you have to do is look in nursing homes in Italy or in Sweden or in the United States, and you can see the devastating impact. I mean, almost everyone gets infected, and lots of older people die. And that's not something we want to see.
We saw that right here in the Big Island. We saw that in our nursing homes right here in Hawaii. Not too many fared well in those nursing homes. It was pretty bad and devastating. A lot of questions coming up, and I appreciate you clarifying the fact that it's emergency use only. And, really, I see a lot of comments. The bottom line is this: talk to your doctor, talk to your personal physician. They will tell you whether or not you should advise you whether or not you should get the vaccine. I mean, let's start with your personal family doctor and take it from there. I've heard a lot about people that have allergic reactions to other vaccines, like myself. when I was in the police force, we had to take hepatitis. It was a 3-shot series, and after the first one, I had some terrible reactions. And I had heard someplace that if you are susceptible to reactions, allergic reactions to vaccines, you should probably talk to your doctor about getting this one. I think the point, what I'm getting from what you're saying is that you have these frontline workers, these medical doctors, these nurses, these aides, all of these people that are working in the hospital in very close contact with positive patients. It's the risk of not taking it is higher than the risk of taking it, and you want to protect them so they can be safe.
Yeah, and we're much better now, right? Their gloves are in general available, masks, the entire face shield things are available, the positive pressure respirators and things, they're much more available than they were in the spring. So when you look at the infection rates in healthcare workers, even in the absence of a vaccine, once we started masking everybody, so not only the healthcare workers, but the people in the hospital, the infection rates in healthcare workers dropped amazingly. And so if you look, there's a study in Brazil. Again, once they started using protective equipment, the risk dropped. But for people who are seeing dozens of potentially COVID infected patients a day, or working very like in an intensive care unit with one, you really want to minimize their risk because they have a very necessary skill set right now, and they do. I mean, they're at risk, and I think the other thing to remember is, and this is for healthcare workers, you're still at risk at home. And so if we looked at the old flu studies when we were using, to see whether masks were working, in fact, they do reduce risk at work, but many people were getting infected at home. So again, it's going to be really important to remember that COVID is everywhere. It's not only in the hospital, and everyone needs to protect themselves. And in doing that, we protect other people from infection, because we will never, many of us will never know if we're carrying the virus because so many people are asymptomatic or have minimal symptoms.
If one of the questions I had, and I did a post today, and you may have seen it, because this vaccine stimulates our ability, our immune system, can we still get the virus? Because I say that because from what I read, with a 95% efficacy rate, the symptoms is almost negated completely. It's nil. It's nothing. You're not going to be in a danger zone as if you didn't have the vaccine. So if you're carrying around the virus, is the virus in a dormant state or is it in an extinct state?
That's a really good question. So I think the easiest, let's see, how do we talk about this? So when I was in Afghanistan, right, we all had to wear Kevlar, but they also gave us a ceramic plate to put in there because there are ways to make bullets that'll penetrate Kevlar. The thing to remember is that vaccines are very seldom 100%. They may be really effective, and that's essentially what we know about the Pfizer vaccine and the Moderna vaccine and the AstraZeneca vaccine. They're effective at preventing severe disease. They're effective at preventing symptomatic disease. So the criteria for a case in the Pfizer study was you had to have a symptom consistent with COVID-19, so say cough or fever, and a positive PCR test. Were they able to look at whether it prevented asymptomatic infection? That's a much more difficult thing. It would have required a lot more time and money in order to do that. So that's not the question they answered. So the issue here is that we know that it protects people against a disease, against symptomatic disease, and it actually looks like it does pretty good at preventing severe disease. But will it prevent infection? And can a person still be infected? Yes. In fact, there were breakthrough infections, like 8 or so or 9 in the Pfizer study. And those are expected. I mean, not all vaccines are 100%, right? Everything, if you get enough of a dose or if you get it the wrong, through the wrong route, you can get infected. And if you get infected, you probably can shed. So by shedding, I mean the virus will still be coming out. Now, it could be less, a lower amount of virus, and that would be good because that would reduce transmission. But at this point, those studies were not designed to answer that question. So when you look at these clinical trials, they're designed to answer very specific questions, and they do that with very direct and easy to answer questions because that allows them to get an answer quickly, and that's what we needed. In the future, and in some of the other vaccine trials that are following on, we're going to get more information about whether it prevents asymptomatic infection, which is actually going to be something that really would have an impact on spread in the community. But we don't, at this point, we don't know. We do know it protects people. We don't know that it protects the community, which actually, again, some people are saying, well, we should vaccinate the school children first because they're the ones who'll spread it, in the house or in the home or give it to grandma and grandpa. But we don't know that the vaccine actually prevents that kind of transmission. We do know that the vaccine will protect grandma and grandpa. So, when you're thinking about who gets protected first, with this vaccine, with the information we have now, we protect the people at risk for severe complications.
So I guess the next question to that, and then I'll turn it over to Mel, is, so if you've been vaccinated and now you come in contact with someone who has the virus and now they're shedding, can they and say they passed it on to you? Can you harbor it long enough to go and give it to someone else? And the reason why I say that is what my fear is that once people start getting vaccinated, I think their level of complacency will start to kick in by saying, hey, I got vaccinated, I got nothing to worry about. But yet, if you're carrying the virus and you're able to shed the virus, it's almost as if you're being asymptomatic in a way because you won't have any symptoms to show for it. But yet the virus is still deadly enough that it could be transmitted to someone else. Is that possible? Transmitting the virus to someone else and you yourself was vaccinated already. Is it possible?
Yes, and that's why I think you've heard Dr. Fauci say, and we've been thinking about how to make an ad campaign to emphasize to people that the vaccination is an important solution for us, but it doesn't mean that we stop wearing masks and doing social distancing when we can, because it's still possible for you to get infected, and the vaccine may prevent the virus from making a severe infection, but you still may have a low grade, a mild infection, and you could potentially still transmit the virus. So again, and the thing is, you're wearing a mask actually does protect people. So it protects other people from virus that may be coming from you. So yes, the messaging should be very strong that after you're vaccinated, you still should wear a mask until we sound the all clear, until we know that this vaccine is working, that enough people in the community are vaccinated, that there's not going to be a lot of additional spread. We should wear masks and continue to distance and avoid crowds. And in Korea, one of the things is everyone wants so you go to a Korean restaurant, right? They put out all the little dishes, and everyone's chopsticks are in everyone else's little dishes, right? Because it looks good. You reach over and you grab some. It's kind of eating family style, and that's talking to each other because no one's wearing a mask, and sharing food, and we have to think about where transmission is occurring. So we were supposed to go out with some friends, and with the surge now in Seoul, we're up to 800 to 1,000 cases a day now. Not in Seoul, but in all of Korea. We were thinking, it might not be such a good idea to go outside and go to restaurants. So, and here they haven't locked anything down yet, but you also have the option now of just going and asking for them to put it in a bag and taking it home. And so I think we've been encouraging people to do that.
Wow. Yeah, we were talking before you came on about, I think the messaging, which I think is part of the problem, is that this is kind of like the silver bullet. We know it's not, and people are going to get complacent. But, I think a lot of the questions that we get about the effectiveness of the vaccine we just don't have the data yet. I mean, we just don't have the data, and I'm assuming that is why we don't have the true approval of the FDA or the other countries' version of the FDA. That we just don't have the data. So for emergency use, no problem. And we have to get something out, and this is what it is. But yet, this isn't the final approved version, I guess, of the vaccine that may ultimately be available at the local CVS at some point.
Yeah, that's absolutely correct. And I think we need to remember the FDA approved this with 2 months worth of safety and efficacy data. And it would be really nice to know. I mean, I don't think anyone's expecting that it'll stop working at 6 months. But, you know, with the RNA vaccines, again, we don't have as much experience. So, you know, it would be great to know that the vaccine continues to protect and be safe at 6 months and at 12 months. And the FDA, the US CDC, and individual states will be tracking side effects. So it's really going to be important as people are vaccinated to really understand if there are any very, very rare complications that we just didn't see in the clinical trials. And sometimes, you know, you have to vaccinate 1 million people to start to see certain very rare complications. And often that happens after a vaccine is licensed. So that happens under normal circumstances as well. The systems are in place though in the United States. Unfortunately, the systems are not in place in many of the other countries in this world. And we do need to get that information.
How long do you estimate before we get to that point with the approval, the final approval? Is that 2 years, 3 years? I mean, I would assume it would have to take quite a bit because, you know, some of the questions right now is, you know, how long does the vaccine last? We really won't know until that time period expires, right? Until we actually vaccinate people and we wait 6 months or 8 months or a year and determine whether or not the antibodies are still there. What's your estimate as far as until this vaccine can be rolled out in its final form?
Right. That's a good question. So the answer is right now we don't know. My guess is that at month 6, the Data and Safety Monitoring Board is going to be looking at people who receive vaccine versus those who didn't get any. And by then, the data may be so overwhelming that the vaccine is protecting and that it may be preventing severe illnesses. I mean, it will be much stronger that it's preventing severe illnesses, hospitalizations, maybe even deaths. Once they have that information, it becomes very difficult for them to ethically continue a trial. So the Data and Safety Monitoring Board, which is independent and makes a recommendation to the manufacturer, may say, you know, we think you have to stop. We don't think it's fair to the placebo group to continue anymore. And when that happens, then that vaccine is probably going to go forward and will probably be approved. The US FDA would like there to be at least 12 months or to keep people on study for at least 12 months. And so that would be a target. And it may be that the disease is mild enough when people are wearing masks, when most people are wearing masks, that you're not going to see as many hospitalizations or deaths. So, you know, they may be able to keep people on trial for over 6 months. But, you know, just to give you an idea now, we're looking at doing more phase 3 trials, so more of these efficacy trials for other vaccines around the world. And there's a real question whether or not, you know, next year, April, May, June, we'll be able to use a placebo. And that actually really is important. That's an important statement because it says that people now consider the vaccine to be so important that giving a person a placebo is unethical. That from a scientific, and ethics are really important, and they really are a primary consideration when we test things in human beings. But from a scientific perspective, it does make things more difficult because the trials now have to become larger, or we could get lucky and one of these companies may say, you know what, we know exactly what the vaccine is doing and here's the test you need to do. And once we have that test, we call it a correlate. And it's like a lab test. And once we have that correlate, then we can actually start using that correlate to evaluate vaccines. And we don't need to do these big randomized trials, 10, 40,000 people. The problem is that the correlates sometimes take a while to understand, for scientists to discover what the protective correlate is, although they're working on it already. And hopefully they'll find one. But sometimes it can be a while, and some vaccines there are no correlates. But yeah, so that's a great question, but it gets to, we're watching these things moving forward in real time and trying to guess. It's kind of like the question a lot of people ask now. So when are we going to get vaccine? And when is vaccine going to be available, in South Africa or in Mozambique? And, you're looking at things changing, Pfizer's ramping up production, Moderna's ramping up production, but they have these commitments to different countries. So vaccine is going here and there, and it's really difficult to know. And then Moderna says, well, it's going to be March before we have significant production capability. And then something happens, and all of a sudden, then it's April or May. So we're watching things go in real time, and it's going to be a little difficult in the right now to know exactly what we'll be even a month from now. Because what if now Johnson & Johnson and Novavax both announce interim efficacy, and they're approved for emergency use also? We get into this very complicated situation where even in the United States, it's going to be, you can probably get a vaccine, but which one? And are there differences? And, these are, I call them the day after efficacy questions. Those are the things, we were rushing to get to this point where we have vaccines that protect people against severe disease or disease. Now we're going to have to figure out, some of the other questions that are actually really important when we come to how do we give the vaccine? Do we need to give boosters? Could it be possible to give people a half dose to make the vaccine go farther? And you saw that, right? The AstraZeneca vaccine. A person who got a half dose followed at some point later, over a month later by a full dose, had 90% efficacy. Whereas a person who got 2 regular doses had 60%.
Wow.
So that's why that when AstraZeneca says our average was 70, it's a little bit difficult because they had 90 in a small group of people and 60 in the rest. And, I hope that the 90 was right and that they'll be able to, it was kind of not a mistake, because I don't think they like to use that word, but the way the vaccine was made initially, they didn't measure something correctly. So not accidentally, people got a half dose rather than a full dose. It turns out that those people had 90% protection. And, the company is looking at it going, that's great. And then they looked at their regular dose and it was 60%. And they're going, okay, so what is it about this vaccine and the dosing? Is there a way that we can optimize this and make this into the vaccine? And, those are really important questions. And, unfortunately, we had to have an answer. So we did things one particular way that we thought and were pretty sure would work. And in fact, it did. But there are always improvements. And those improvements can be very important.
Does vaccine work similar to, and I'll give you an example, like a swimming pool in chlorine? Chlorine is good. It kills the algae. But if you chlorinate your pool too much, the chlorine will basically kill the chlorine. So therefore, you can't stop the algae growth if you over chlorinate a pool. With a vaccine given in this 2-dose step, if it's not monitored or regulated properly, can the second dose that I guess you consider a booster at the second one, is it enough that it can basically harm the first dose that was given? Have you seen that happen before?
That's a great question, actually, and it is very relevant. So I think you might have heard that there was another Chinese company called CanSino, and they had a vaccine based on an adenovirus, but it's adenovirus type 5. And those of us who've done HIV vaccines know about adenovirus type 5. And adenovirus type 5 is a great virus vector because you put something in there and people get great responses. The problem is that your body has seen, and many people in America, though not the majority, have seen adenovirus type 5. And when you have, sometimes your response to the vaccine is impaired because the body doesn't see the COVID-19. It only sees adenovirus. It's like waving a red flag in front of a bull, right? The immune system says, oh, I know what this is. It's adenovirus. It doesn't say, oh, I know what this. No, I don't know what this is. It looks like COVID. So if you give more than one dose of adenovirus vaccine too close, you may actually not see much additional response. And in fact, CanSino had that problem. They had lots of side effects in people as they increased the dose, because adenoviruses can be very potent stimulators. But the other thing was that in people who had very strong anti-adenovirus responses to begin with, they didn't see any, the vaccine didn't work. So yes, it definitely can happen. And for instance, one Chinese company, again, it's called Sinovac. It's actually one of the ones that we'll probably announce sometime this month, maybe next week. If they gave the 2 doses 2 weeks apart, they had one response, one level of protective neutralizing antibody, this protein that binds to and activates viruses. If they gave it at 4 weeks, they had a higher level. Again, because the immune system needs a bit of rest before it sees the pathogen again. So that's why the boosting, the spacing of doses can sometimes be very important. Now, for us right now, what we want is to have as much immune response as quickly as possible. And so that's why most of the vaccines are given 1 month apart. But could you do better if you could give it 1 dose followed by the second dose at month 6? Sometimes it actually works much, much better if you give a late boost. And again, these are all, yeah, exactly your question. So, and I guess the other part of it is, if you gave too much, could it be bad? Actually, what probably happens is that you reach a peak and it kind of levels off. And depending on the vaccine and whether the types of protective responses, it could possibly drop off if you gave too much, which is why when companies test their vaccine, they test initially a few different doses, and then they pick the best one. Like Pfizer BioNTech, they had, I think, 4 different doses. They dropped the first 2 because of side effects. They great responses, but too many side effects. And then they picked the one that gave them good levels of what we thought were protective responses and fewer side effects. So again, it's a process.
If you guys just joined us, I see a couple of questions about this. Is Dr. Jerome Kim. He's a Director General of International Vaccine Institute in South Korea. He's a local boy right out of Honolulu, and was in the military, was a military doctor, and now runs the institute up in South Korea. So that's just for those that may not have seen you before. So Doc, we'll have, and I'm assuming that as these vaccines are being administered, these manufacturers, these Pfizer's and everybody else are keeping track. And a lot of the questions that are being asked, a lot of the unknowns will be determined in the next 6 months to a year. But as these vaccines roll out, they'll like you said, there'll probably be different options. How in the world do we determine? I mean, is it something that our doctors will be telling us? Is it? I mean, how do you choose when you might have 5 or 6 at some point, maybe more? How do we, as the regular person on the street, figure out? Okay, which one do I take? Should we just rely on our doctor's advice?
So so when a vaccine goes through the FDA first. The FDA, for instance, for Pfizer, issued an emergency use authorization. And then the US CDC committee, the ACIP, the Committee for Immunization Practices for the United States, actually reviews the data and makes a recommendation. So your doctor will probably get a series of recommendations, but at least initially, it may be determined largely by availability. So if you're going to be vaccinated, before probably the end of summer, there may be a limitation in the amount of virus. So for instance, the US pre-ordered 100 million doses of Pfizer's vaccine. Well, it turns out that a bunch of countries did also, like the UK. And the US then, once they saw the efficacy data, once they said, oh my goodness, Pfizer's 95% efficacy, they said, and we want 100 million more doses. And Pfizer said, sorry guys, there are a lot of people ahead of you in line. You got to wait until July before we'll have enough, which gives you an idea. We'll use up our 50 million doses. 100 million doses, 50 million people get Pfizer vaccine. And then we're not going to have any until July. So what's going to happen in the meantime? Well, Moderna's vaccine will start ramping up in March timeframe, is what the CEO said. Presumably AstraZeneca hopefully will have some sort of use authorization, and maybe Johnson & Johnson and Novavax, and it will depend on when they can ship doses and what's available. So we're going to have to depend on the CDC for recommendations, but they will issue recommendations.
One real quick question now. A lot has been said about herd immunity, that we got to vaccinate 60% or 70% of the population in order for herd immunity to start working. These doses are not 60% of the community or the population of America. It's far from it. So, I think the messaging, I just don't want to see people getting false hope and reverting back to being normal. I think your comments tonight are making a lot of people realize that, whoa, this is kind of not what I thought, which is a good thing. So as far as herd immunity, and without getting into a medical thesis, we're not going to see any of that for quite a while as well, right?
Yeah, so herd immunity is a difficult thing, right? Because you'd hope that when we vaccinate 40,000 people that we'd have a good idea, but in fact, the way the trials are set up, we really answer only one question: does the vaccine protect individuals? When we're looking at herd immunity, we're not talking about an individual, we're talking about everybody in the community, in the country, or in the state. And the trials that we are doing now for Pfizer and Moderna and AstraZeneca and Johnson & Johnson, they're actually designed not to answer that question. So what we have to do is make a best guess. And the first guess is that you'd need roughly the same level of vaccination as you would need to have infection. So remember in the beginning, some people were saying, we should just let the infection run its course, and when 60 to 70% of Americans have been infected by COVID-19, then the community will be protected. So the same number, about 60%, comes up in our calculation for herd immunity from vaccination. But there's a caveat, and that is that it really does depend on the virus and the vaccine. So I think you might remember that there was a big measles outbreak in the US last year. We almost lost our measles-free status. So measles has officially been eradicated in the United States. It doesn't exist in the country unless it's imported by someone, in this case, someone who came from the Philippines, who brought measles into the United States, and it spread among people who were not vaccinated. Luckily, 90% or so of Americans have been vaccinated. But that, for measles, you have to have 90 to 95% of people vaccinated in order for there to be herd immunity.
Wow.
Yeah, I know but that's because measles is very contagious. Mm-hmm. So we're hoping that, and the vaccine is very good. The measles vaccine efficacy is 95%. So that's a really important feature. But sometimes you can be surprised. So our oral cholera vaccine, so this is a vaccine that prevents a diarrheal disease known as cholera, its efficacy is 60%. But if you vaccinate 60% of an Indian city, you have 85% efficacy in reduction in the number of cholera cases in that city. So herd protection actually can be very powerful because it can extend the benefit of vaccination to a lot of people who are not vaccinated. And that's why the set of clinical trials now that need to be done really have to be designed to look at the question around, are we protecting the community against infection? Those are called effectiveness trials. Some people call them real world evidence trials, because now you have to take the vaccine from essentially a clinical experiment where everything is done correctly to the real world where, I may miss my 1 month, my second dose because I was busy, I had things to do, or I forgot. And I come in at week 6 rather than at week 4. Or, maybe because the doc's, refrigerator's not working, the temperature went up to 10 degrees. Or, the doc or the nurse left it on the counter overnight, and that's the vaccine that I got injected. Now, you think that all of those things would not happen, but in the real world, you have to be ready for those things. And so the question is, once we get out of the clinical trial and we start rolling out vaccine and we start vaccinating, cities or a state, what are the number of breakthrough infections that we'll see in people who are vaccinated? How well, so if someone comes from the mainland, so say they vaccinate 60% of Hawaii, a person comes from the mainland and there's an outbreak, how many people will be infected? Or, which would be the ideal thing, the presence of vaccinated people will limit the outbreak in size. So instead of having 200 people in the outbreak, maybe only 10. So again, we don't really understand all these things, and I think the people who fund this work and help to understand the research questions are now beginning to think about how we design the effectiveness trials, these trials to look at herd immunity and herd immunity questions. But the first thing to do was to get out a vaccine that could protect people, individuals, and that's important.
Sorry, Charlie. And I think that's kind of what I really let the public know, the viewers know, that the trials that were done for the current vaccines the trials were done to test how well they protect the people getting the vaccines,
right?
And not necessarily testing the vaccine for protecting others in the community. Just really for those that are receiving the vaccine to see if in fact it limits the intensity of the disease, the sickness, and that's pretty much where we're at right now.
Right, and that's the way the FDA licenses vaccines. That's the information they need to know. And so again, the trials were designed specifically to generate the information the FDA needs in order to approve a vaccine. And then we can answer the bigger question. I mean, which is actually, if you think about it, protecting individuals is important. But what a country or a state wants to know is how many people need to be vaccinated before I'm going to start to see, significant reductions in the community of hospitalizations, of people coming into the doctor with COVID symptoms. When are we going to start to see that? And that's what some of these additional studies will show.
Got it.
Some of the viewers have asked, and they're very interested. I've seen it numerous times, but and this is just a personal preference on your part. Which vaccine would you take right now if you had the opportunity? Which would you take, or did you take it already in South Korea?
No, so South Korea is not, and they won't have vaccine available. Let's see, they'll ship vaccine at the end of February. And so their first doses will probably be available at the end of March, at the end of their formal review process. And they're not probably going to have a lot of vaccine until the middle to the middle of next year. So, and because, I'm an American, I don't think I qualify for receiving vaccine under the Korean program. They will buy enough vaccine to vaccinate between 30 and 40 million people. Korea has 50 million population. Which vaccine would I take? I think I would take the first one that was offered to me. Based on, where, assuming that it's been reviewed and approved by the US FDA or the EMA, what we call a stringent regulatory authority, right? You don't want, some country that doesn't have expert vaccine evaluators to approve a vaccine, and then, you jump right in and, roll up your sleeve. You want someone who knows what they're doing, who does this a lot, and who really has a responsibility to the public to make sure that vaccines are safe and effective. And that's what the FDA has as its found, its remit. It is supposed to do that, and that's what we want. So I would take any of the ones that are recommended by or approved by the FDA and recommended by the CDC, and I would take it as quickly as possible. It may be that in the future we're going to need boosters anyway. In fact, many of us think that we probably will get boosters. The side effect profiles so far look reasonable. Again, we could be surprised by long-term complications, but when you look at 300,000 American deaths, and it's really difficult to. It's not hard to understand why a vaccine will be important, but it's also going to be important to remember that the vaccine isn't going to be a single solution, that we're going to have to continue to work together and protect each other with masks and distancing, and avoiding situations where COVID can be transmitted.
Okay. Now let me ask you. I'm gonna try to phrase this so I can get it in real quickly, but it's a 3-question presentation. The first question is, how do we know? And this is from a viewer. How do we know if the vaccine actually took to our bodies when you first was vaccinated? And is there some type of test to verify that it took? The second question is it like antibiotics in a sense that you should take all of it, or otherwise the strain could mutate into something worse? And then the last question would be, when you're given a first shot, vaccinated shot, and you're scheduled for the second, but due to whatever reason, so say if you took the Pfizer, because our understanding is you can't switch Pfizer and Moderna. If you're Pfizer, you take the second at Pfizer. But if it's not available, the second shot, what is done? What can be done?
Okay, so let's see. So the first question was, which one?
If you took the vaccine, how can you tell if it actually took?
Okay. So, and actually this may be a problem for in general. So, we have these rapid tests that measure antibody.
Right.
And we have rapid tests that measure antibody and antigen. And then we now have rapid tests that only do antigen. So, and there are differences, right? The antibody test will tell you that you've been infected sometime, maybe 7 days or more ago. The antigen test will tell you if you have an infection right now. So it's like the PCR test, not as sensitive, but it's like the PCR test. So it'll tell you that you have an infection. The antigen antibody test, again, will tell you if you're having an infection now, or if you've been infected sometime more than 7 days ago. So if you take the Pfizer, Moderna, AstraZeneca vaccines, your antibody test should turn positive. But we don't know what percentage of people will have the positive test after they've been vaccinated, because when the companies are measuring the antibody, the infection-fighting protein that's made by the vaccine, they're really answering a question with a test that they do in the laboratory that is very, very sensitive and actually has to pass through 2 different levels of quality review before the test can be done and before the FDA will accept the test. So it's really not what you get through the over-the-counter diagnostics or the rapid diagnostics that many states are using now. Actually, Korea is using now. So yes, those tests could turn positive, and they may be a marker, but since they weren't necessarily tested in the trial, we don't know for how long they'll be positive. And it's the antibody tests, not the antigen tests, that will be positive. So it's important to be able to tell if you're going to try to do that yourself, and I wouldn't necessarily recommend that you do, that that it's an antibody test. And it takes, so typically we measure it at 4 weeks after vaccination. But again, I wouldn't recommend that people go out and do this. But when we do the studies, the peak of antibody production tends to be about 4 weeks after the second dose. 2 weeks, it's also positive, but it turns out 4 weeks is better because the levels rise over time.
Well, basically, you answered questions 1 and 2 right there.
Okay, good. And then the last question again, see, I'm getting old. It's hard to remember things.
The last question is, if you're given the first test and say by some reason there's not enough dosage for you to receive your second test, what are the options at that point? What do you do?
Yeah, so hopefully the companies, when they distribute vaccine, will distribute it in 2-dose increments, right? So you should theoretically be able to get your second dose. So that's one part. The problem with the Pfizer vaccine in particular is its storage conditions. So, and this gets to a very important point about RNA vaccines. Originally, Pfizer had to be kept at dry ice temperature, minus 70 degrees Celsius, which is, I guess, like minus 100 or so Fahrenheit. So it's really cold. But the good news is that now you can actually bring it to refrigerator temperature, 2 to 8 degrees, for up to 5 days. Now, so say you're going to your doctor or to the health center to get vaccinated. Now, if you come back too late, the vaccine, the dose that they got for your second dose could be expired. I mean, could be outside of its window. Now, if the Pfizer is continuing to provide vaccine, then that shouldn't be an issue. But it may be, especially early on, that the vaccine is very short supply. So could you get a second vaccination? Possibly. There's no recommendation on it yet, because until maybe in the next few days, we'll have formal approval of the second vaccine. We don't know what would happen. So many people would probably just start from scratch and give you 2 doses of the other vaccine. Or you could get the Johnson & Johnson vaccine, which is a single dose. The problem is, again, when we start to mix and match vaccines, that's not the way the vaccines were tested. And none of the vaccine trials actually looked at people who had received a different vaccine or necessarily who had COVID infection beforehand. So we don't know how the vaccines will work. I mean, theoretically, there's no reason why they shouldn't work. But there are always going to be questions about whether you're getting the best possible protection if you're doing things that weren't a part of the study, if that makes sense. Because you think about this like an experiment, right? And we gave 2 doses of the vaccine a month apart, plus or minus 3 days. So, 3 days early, 3 days late, but that was all considered acceptable. Once you start to change things, then those specific questions haven't been answered. Now, theoretically, probably don't make that much of a difference, but we don't know. And theoretically, we've been wrong theoretically. I mean, and scientists should be able to admit, sometimes we're wrong. And the things that we believed beforehand turn out not to be correct. Now, who would have been able to predict that a half dose given first would be better than a full dose? So again, I think be very careful and set reminders, and hopefully doctors and public health offices will send you a reminder before you're supposed to come in.
Okay.
I would hope that second dose has your name on it, your ID number on it. That's just how it has to be. I mean, so if you're in that group, you're gonna get the second dose, but otherwise it's gonna be a problem, because I don't think we'll have the availability after this first one, and it may be a while. So I would assume that hopefully that is all in place.
Right. But that vaccine would still need to be stored at minus 70. So not all the facilities will necessarily have that. So what they may need to do is call for the shipment to come, a week or so before, probably like a few days before they need it. They'll have to call for it and make sure that they have it. So the Pfizer vaccine, a little more problem. The Moderna vaccine can actually be stored in a refrigerator, 2 to 8 degrees centigrade, which is what? 4 to 15 degrees or something, 4 to 10 degrees Fahrenheit. No.
So you could put them right outside your door, outside in South
No,
Korea,
it's too
10 degrees. It's too cold.
It's minus 10. It's minus 10 Celsius.
Oh.
It's 10 degrees Fahrenheit. Minus 10,
Oh.
actually minus 12 this morning. It's cold.
Oh my Lord.
So yeah. So it would be a little too cold. But refrigerator temperature is 2 to 8 degrees Celsius. So the Moderna vaccine can be stored for a month at that temperature. So there's a little more flexibility around Moderna than there is with Pfizer for now. I mean, Pfizer's working to extend it from 5 days to more at 2 to 8 degrees, and that will make it a lot easier on the logistics side.
Doc, it's 5 o'clock, man. That hour went by quick. I respect your time. I know you're a busy guy. It's Wednesday in South Korea right now. It's Wednesday morning, I believe. Any closing thoughts? I mean, if to our viewers, I can tell. I don't know if you have Facebook running, but the comments are very positive and they're very, very thankful. But any closing thoughts before you gotta leave?
Yeah, I think it's really important since the last time to have vaccines that actually are safe and efficacious. But I think we have to remember that we only have right now 2 months worth of data to go on, And it's going to be really important to see, not only for these vaccines at month 6 and month 12, but also for the other ones, the Johnson & Johnson vaccine and the Novavax vaccine. And the other really important thing is that the vaccine is not going to protect you. That we are still going to need to use masks and distancing for some period of time until we are relatively sure that the pandemic is under control. And we're doing this because there are lots of things about the vaccine that we still don't understand. We know it protects individuals. We don't know how well it does for the rest of society. So even after you're vaccinated, masks, distance are still going to be really important. So in Korea, they have a quarantine, but so if you're coming from the outside, like when my daughter came back from college, she was in quarantine at one end of the house, and whenever she was out, we had masks on in the house. And then, at the end of 14 days, no symptoms, we could take the masks off. But when people come into the house now, it's masks on. Again, we're not only protecting ourselves, but we're hopefully protecting the people we work with. So thanks, everyone. It's always great.
Oh, man.
I can come back soon.
Charlie?
Well, as always, I like to say thank you to Dr. Jerome Kim, proud graduate of Iolani High School on Oahu. And, some people may have recognized his brother at the Le Jourdain Academy as I guess your brother's the head dean there, or head principal.
Head of school, yep.
Yeah, and they
He used to be head of school at Kamehameha.
Yeah. And your brother and his crew, they had a slight outbreak of COVID, and they did a bang up job in the response. It was all over the news, and I was very, very, very impressed on how they squelched it. And they did their own contact tracing as well.
Yeah, they do.
They did a good job. To our viewers out there, it's not often we get someone of this caliber that can break it down into layman's terms and try to have a discussion. So you and I, because there's still a lot of unanswered questions, ladies and gentlemen. But we try to get as much through, and like Dr. Kim said, this is everything is relatively new. So there will be some peaks and valleys that we'll have to traverse through and see what happens then. But for the most part, like he said, if you have the opportunity to take a vaccine, he'll take the first one that's offered to him, because from the studies have shown it does work for individuals. And again, the question that I pose, when you get into a situation of possibly transmitting it to others, that means that if another individual is vaccinated, then the likelihood of passing it on to another vaccinated person would probably, do no harm. But if the person is not vaccinated, then that person can get seriously sick if we're not careful. So we're going to have to practice on using our mask, practice social distancing. And like Mel said, it's all about the messaging, because I think the fear I personally have is that everybody will let their hair down once they get vaccinated, and they think everything's going to be hunky-dory. And well, we just got to be careful. So I hope you folks took something away from this show today. And I appreciate Dr. Kim very much. Thank you so much for being on with us. Mel?
Thanks, Charlie. Thanks, Mel. Actually, can I say one thing? I just want to say hi to Sam and Patty, because we message all the time. So hi.
Well, Doc, I like Charlie said, I mean, we're just honored. It's not always you can get a director general from the International Vaccine Institute. We appreciate your time. We know you're very busy, and we appreciate you sharing. You clarified a lot of things today. I think for me, myself, oh gosh, I think my eyes are a little wider open now. And we just want to thank you. Thank you for your time. For our viewers, we will be replaying this tonight again at our normal time at 7 o'clock. So our normal viewers that are probably working right now can get a chance to hear this. And I have no doubt that the media will pick up on it as well. Doc, you're probably going to get a call from our local media tomorrow. But anyway, thank you so much. Merry Christmas to you and your family up in South Korea. We wish only good things for the rest of this year, and of course for next year. And I'm sure we'll have you back on again as time goes on. So
Great.
Thank you.
Thanks, Charlie. Thanks. Well, Merry Christmas to both of you.
Aloha. You take care. Stay safe.
Aloha. Take care.
All right. Bye-bye. Aloha.
Bye.